So let's go ahead and look at example number 3. So this is pretty interesting because this is how you can apply, how many students attend a baseball game on a trip, and this has to do with like a real world application. So let's read this question together. A group of 40 children attended a baseball game on a field trip. Each child received either a hot dog or a bag of popcorn. Hot dogs were $2.25 and popcorn was $1.75. If the total bill was $83.50, how many of each were purchased? Show equations and show your work. So I'm going to underline some key things. So the first key thing that I want to talk about is that I want to underline is the hot dogs were $2.25, popcorn was $1.75, total bill was $83.50, and that there were 40 children that attended. All right, so think about how we could set up our two equations. All right, the first equation is 225h, which represents the hot dog, plus 175p, and we're going to set that equal to $83.50. The second equation is h plus p equals 40. Again, we're going to solve for one of the variables. I solved for the variable p, but you could also solve for h and get the same answer. So when we solve for p in the second equation, we get p equals negative h plus 40. All right? So I'm going to take what p equals, and I'm going to substitute this into the p from the first equation. And when I do that, I'm going to get this, 225h um, plus 175 times negative h plus 40 equals $83.50. And I'm going to use my distributive property to solve for that. So I get 225h. Right? When I do the next thing and I multiply, I get minus 175h. When I multiply 175 times 175 times 40, that's 70. And I'm going to set all of that equal to $83.50. Right now, I'm going to combine like terms. So I'm going to combine these two because they both have the h variable in them. And when I do that, I get a half. So I'm going to take 0.5h, I bring everything else down, plus 70 equals $83.50. Then I'm solving for h, so I'm going to subtract 70 from both sides, and I get 1/2 h equals 13 5/10. Then in order to solve for h, I have to divide both sides by 5/10. Okay, so when I'm solving for h, I get 27, right? Now I have to go back and solve for the other variable p. So I look at my second equation because it's the easiest one, which is h plus p equals 40. Right? If I'm solving for h, if I'm solving for p and I know that h is 27, then I'm going to substitute 27 in place for h and solve for p. Right? And when I do that, I have to subtract 27 from both sides, and I get 40 minus 27, and for that I get 13. Right? So what this means is that there were 27 hot dogs that were purchased, and there were 13 bags of popcorn. Okay? Now, the most important thing that we have to do is check our work because that allows us to see if our answer is correct or if it's not. So we're going to do the check step. All right? The check step, I'm going to substitute these numbers into both of the original equations. So my first equation that I get is this, and I'm going to replace the h with 27, and I'm going to replace the p with 13, and I'm going to see if that equals $83.50. When I multiply $2.25 times 27, I get 60.75, and then I'm going to multiply 175 times 13, that's $22.75, and when I add those two together, I get 83.5, 83 and 5 tenths, which is equivalent to 83 and 50 hundredths. They're equal. So that's how I know I did the equation right so far, but I have to check both equations. So now I'm going to check equation number 2. All right, equation number 2 is h plus p equals 40. So I'm going to take 27 plus 13, and yes, that one is correct too, because together these equal 40. That's how I know that I solved it correctly. When you're doing these types of problems, you want to make sure that your answer makes sense. So you do have to use number sense when you do this. Is this a reasonable answer? You know, if you think about how much money you have, does your answer sound like it would work?